Hey guys, so I thought that I would put out a video here explaining what it is that a producer does. Quick background on me. I was in production for about 10 years. I studied under a couple different producers, and I learned a lot from them. I also learned, and it took me about 10 years to learn, that I'm not a producer. I mix and master, and I'm very good at that. I have an ear for it, and I've also trained my ear quite a bit, and I've done that through working with other producers, as well as the people that they would use for mixing and mastering. So I was fortunate enough to have a wealth of knowledge about mixing and mastering, and I realized that was what I was better at. I don't have the patience to be a producer, and so that's what I do now. I mix and master a lot of commercials for independent radio stations. The conglomerates they have their in-house stuff nowadays, but I still do a fair amount of that. So that's a little bit about me. But I did work in production, and I did it basically for free. I wasn't even an intern. I just worked there for free. I shouldn't say for free. I got quite a bit of stuff out of that, and studio time and things of that nature, because I am also a musician, so that's always good. But I'm hearing a trend, and I've been hearing this trend over the past few years especially, of people referring to themselves as a producer. And I think it's time that we attack that. It's thrown around way too willy-nilly, way too easily, and it's not applicable to you, okay? You can drag and drop some loops into a DAW. That makes you a composer or a songwriter. It doesn't make you a producer, all right? Let me give you an example of how it's not applicable. My daughter uses the term literally a lot. And she'll say things to me like, "Dad, I'm literally starving to death." No, you're not. No, you're not. There are people in the world that are starving to death. I don't know too many in the United States, all right? And I certainly don't in my own home. I know nobody is starving to death. So she is not literally starving to death. I think we can establish that. It's the same thing for a producer. For some reason, it's been whittled down to, if you can make beats, you're a producer. Now, I have another channel, and it's called Metal Biker Dude Reacts. We got about close to 40,000 subscribers over there. Over the past couple of years, I have become a very big fan of rap and hip-hop. I love the lyrical content, the stories that they tell. So I want to make it clear that this isn't to hate on rap and hip-hop producers. All right. But at the same time, I think it's important that we clarify what a producer is. And dragging and dropping loops into a DAW and rendering it out is not production, okay? Being a producer, and I've learned this through other people and witnessed it with my own eyes, you have to wear so many hats. You have to be kind of a songwriter. You have to have an ear for structure. And quite honestly, I think it's very beneficial if you have a really firm grasp on music theory. You don't have to be an expert as long as you have an ear. But I believe that you should have a full understanding of music theory, okay? You have to be a psychologist. You have to be a psychiatrist. You have to be an engineer. You have to be a mixing and mastering. You have to be a budget manager. You have to be their friend. you have to wear so many hats as a producer that's why there are so few that are successful at it. Okay? The reason that I qualified what I said about the fact that I love rap and hip hop is because it's going to sound like that's who I'm attacking. And in a sense, I am. Okay? Because it seems to be the only genre where we have a million producers that have never produced anything other than some beats. It is not what a producer is. If you don't like that, I don't know what to tell you. I've been with producers. I've done producing. It's not what producing is. It's just not even close. Dr. Dre is, in my opinion, he is the pinnacle in rap and hip hop. Rap. He is the creme de la creme of producers. Dr. Dre is a producer. Okay? Jay-Z is a producer. There are some really big time hip hop and rap producers. But then you have about 110 million producers that have never ever stepped a foot into a real studio. Okay? And we're going to talk about real studio versus home studio too. But up front here, I want to talk about what producers do. Producers are a part of the equation. So if you have a nucleus, this is your nucleus. Your producer needs to be at that center point. Okay? He has to know everything that's around him. He has to understand the people he's working with. He has to have an understanding of their direction, where they want to go with their music, what it is that they're looking for from him. One thing that I will say is that there are really bad real producers out there because it's my way or the highway kind of thing. It doesn't work today. It worked in the 70s, but it doesn't. You see so many albums now, and even non-rap and hip hop albums, where you have 2 or 3 different producers on the same album. Back in the 70s, that was just, you never heard of that. You just didn't hear of that. So, you get bands like Rush and Van Halen, Ted Templeton. You have these big iconic bands. They loved working with a particular producer for a reason. Now Rush ended up leaving Terry Brown and ended up going with a series of producers. But that's because they'd already made it and everything else. But I digress. Okay, sorry about that. But let's take a listen to a song real quick. I'm just going to play about, 7-8 seconds of it. And I'm going to show you something. I wasn't in the studio, but I can tell you, I promise you, that I know what the producer did in this song. Song from Todd Rundgren. It's called Hello, It's Me. It's from the early 70s. And I picked this song for a reason. And I'll explain that in a minute here. But listen. Okay. So, it's important to me, is what they were singing there. And did you hear Todd Rundgren in the background doing that little falsetto thing? It's a little counterproductive, the fact that I picked Todd Rundgren, but I picked him for a specific reason. that little falsetto thing, that is the kind of thing that a producer will do. He'll say, okay, he's listening. Okay. And he's got this idea, right? He says, Todd, go back in the booth. I want you to do this falsetto piece that he ended up doing, and just let's layer that over top. We'll pull it in the back, drop a little bit. We'll push her out, the girl that's singing. We'll push her out a little bit, and we're gonna have that in the backdrop, just kind of layering it in there. So he goes in there, and it turns out it's on the album. Now, the reason that I use this particular song is because Todd Rundgren is a phenomenal producer. Okay, so most likely it was his idea. But Todd Rundgren, he's got a who's who list of artists that he's worked with. The guy's a phenomenal producer. All right. And I'm very, very envious of all of his work. It's none of this stuff is really necessarily my taste in music that I listen to. I listen to heavy stuff, or I listen to rap and hip hop. But it's still a work of art. Okay. And there's a lot more art that goes into producing music than I think a lot of people are aware of. You know, a producer might listen to a guitar solo, okay? And this guy's playing 30-second notes at 120 beats a minute, right? Or better yet, let's say a band just finishes a song in the demo, and he's listening to it, and he's got his producer's ear on, and excuse me about the microphone. He's got his producer's ear on, and he says, you know, guys, the singer is singing this great. He's got a great voice, tremendous vocalist, right? But let's say it's in C sharp, right? And he's singing in the same octave, in the same register, the entire song. But if we drop that down to C flat, he can sing a falsetto in C flat in the next register, right? Those are the things that a producer looks for. You know, it could be as simple as a tempo change. You know, guys, I'm feeling this. This sounds really good. It's a little too fast. Let's add some groove to it. Let's just drop this back down 6 beats a minute and watch that groove pick up. You know, it's things like that. That's what a producer does. Hang on one second. I want to take a look at my notes here real quick. I just left myself some Cliff Notes. Dr. Dre, we got all that. Yeah, you know, I think that it is important to know that you don't have to go to Juilliard or Berkeley to, you know, have this tremendous understanding. It all begins with two things: your ear and their songwriting. That's where that's what it boils down to. If you've got a good song and you got a producer with a good ear, there's your ticket. You have to have a good song to begin with. What the producer does, he just puts the shine on it. Okay? But he has to have an understanding of how to shine it. You know, the world has come a long, long way with technology. You know, for example, and this is what I was referring to earlier when I was talking about home studio versus, say, Abbey Road Studio or Electric Ladyland. You know, these big iconic studios. Or the sadly former Le Studio in Canada that is now a pile of rubble. That is so unfortunate. But when you get into these big studios with floating floors and all the acoustic treatments and all of this stuff, when you get in there, you inherently have a head start on just about everything else. But do you have the money to pay for that studio? Most of us don't. I sure don't. So what do? What's the alternative? We either use a smaller studio, a local studio, and hopefully the guy that's running the thing knows what he's doing. And I can tell you, more times than not, he doesn't. You have got to have an understanding of frequencies, gain staging, things of these nature. You have to have just a real command of music and how it's produced in order to do that. And there's so few out there that by the sheer numbers of studios that are around, especially the United States, most of them are not very good. I visited, let me tell you a story. I wasn't going to tell this. So I visited this studio one time, and a friend of mine was doing some recording there. And the producer there, I was trying to get him to understand what he needed to do to push some things out front, add depth, dimension to the song, right? I ended up taking over his counsel, and I produced the whole thing myself. This guy didn't even know what gain staging was. He didn't know what gain staging was. Now, he had to have invested $100,000 at least in this studio. And he didn't know what gain staging was. I was going to put the name out there. I'm not going to do that. But I was going to put it out there just so that you guys could avoid it. But the odds are that you weren't going to do that. But, okay, so let's take a home studio. Almost anybody that's watching this has one, okay? I'm sitting in a very small one. This is Studio B. This is my little area where I do my mixing and mastering. Some light recording, but mostly mixing, mastering, or writing. And then I have a studio over there where I can do drums and things like that. Even though I don't have a 64 channel SSL console. It's okay, because although if I were to record at Abbey Road, I would have a lot of things already built into when I recorded it that I wouldn't have to monkey with later on after the fact. We do have a lot of SSL plugins. We have all kinds of tape saturators and analogs and all of these. McDSP makes a phenomenal series of plugins for adding some warmth, that vintage tape sound and things of that nature. And even though we can't afford Abbey Road Studio and we can't really achieve that sound, we can come really damn close, man. And it's just a matter of time before we may surpass it. So, this isn't any kind of knock on home recording studios, because they are a real thing, and they're only going to get bigger, and they're only going to get better. So, but in the end, What it all boils down to is, to be a producer, it has to be more than just being a composer. You have to do all of the aforementioned things that I listed off. You have to. If you don't understand music theory, you are not a producer. There are plenty of YouTube channels out there, plenty of them, explaining what music theory is. I encourage you that if you really want to be a producer and you just can't seem to get into a studio with a good producer to teach it, you need a good producer to teach you. Don't just go intern or work free for somebody that you're going to end up knowing more than in 6 months. What's the point in that? YouTube it. There's all kinds of great channels out there with real producers that produce real music. And, my channel's not for that. That's not at all what I do. And I haven't posted anything on this channel in forever. I think I'm going to get a little more active with that, with some demonstrations and lessons and things of that nature. But just taking what I've learned over the years, which is a small amount, but it could help somebody. So I may do some of that, but there are way better channels than mine for learning about music theory and how to mix and master. I may do some mix and mastering videos. Is primarily what I think I'm going to get into with this channel. But nevertheless, understand what music theory is, because if you don't, you can't produce music. Unless you have the most incredible ear ever, and then you need some things to fall into place. Just learn music theory and you don't have to worry about that. Learn frequencies, learn gain staging, learn these things that you need to know in order to produce a quality music product. That's all I got.